metal community. I saw a nice idea for a thread and a contest started by Bret, who has the Life on This Planet blog YouTube channel, and congratulations to your 100 subscribers. I'm sure I was a subscriber of your channel before, but when I went there it said that I wasn't, but then YouTube keeps ending subscriptions for some strange reason. The topic of this subscription is killer album closers, and great idea. So I had to think a bit before deciding which albums to pick. I picked 8 albums from my collection. Some are quite famous, some of them I showed before, even many times. Oh, it's a bit dark here. There. And, well, enough of that. I just start by showing them now. And I'm just taking them in the order they are lying here on my table. We're going to start with a Swedish group, one of the most popular Swedish prog groups in the 1970s. They were more in the political prog vein, like pop music but with political messages in the lyrics. It was a group called Hoola Bandoola Band. And this is their first album, their debut album from 1971, Garanterat Individuell, and was released on the M&W label. This. And, well, for those of you who like labels, of course, we can show that too. This is it's a later issue, I think, because this has a red label. I don't think it had that when it was issued. And the last track of this album, the second side 2 of this album only contains of 2 songs, and the second one is called Fred, which means peace. And the main theme of this song is really not the ordinary we want peace kind of song. It's more like asking the question, do we really want peace? And it's very thoughtful, very good song. And ends this debut album in a very nice way. The second album they made, Vem kan man lita på, I think is even better. Then they faded a bit with the 2 second albums, but the third and the fourth albums, but still I think they were a great group and they're still very popular. And the 2 lead singers, Björn Afzelius, the late Björn Afzelius, and Mikael Wiehe, have been regarded as some of the greatest songwriters of the last 30-40 years in Sweden. But this is more or less how it started. Right. Okay, this song I've showed so many times, so I'm sure many of you have bored when you see me picking it up again. It's Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly, and this album ends with a cover of Leonard Cohen's Suzanne. But it's very different from Cohen's own version. It's very orchestrated with strings arranged by Yumir Diodato, that you're probably very familiar with, and it's a 9 minutes 45 seconds version with goes through the verses, but very orchestrated, very nice. But it never gets tedious, it never gets boring. It's just a nice listening experience, and it ends, in my book, one of the best pop soul albums ever made. Okay, now we're getting back to one of my favorite bands, namely The Band. And I'm going to show you, well, the first 2 ones have very good songs at the end, like I Shall Be Released on music from Big Pink, and King Harvest, I think, from the Brown album. But I always like the third album too, Stage Fright, even though it hasn't been as praised as the 2 first ones. Still a very good album. Maybe not as good as the former two ones, but still a very good album, Stage Fright. And the final song here is not one of the most famous band songs. Many of you may not even have heard it if you haven't had this album. It's not the song that is picked for the greatest hits albums, but I like it very much. It's called The Rumor, and it's a good ballad in which all the singers, the vocal active members of the band, sing together different parts and puts together a very nice ballad that closes this album, that I think is very good. It's actually one of my favorite albums with the band, even though the two first ones are slightly better, but this needs to be praised more than it has been praised in the past. Okay, what would this kind of list be without me picking a Paul Simon album as well? I thought first of Silent Eyes of Still Crazy After All These Years, but no, I think I'll pick this one instead. It's one of his least known albums, the last album he made before going to Africa and making Graceland. The album is Hearts and Bones from 1983 on Warner Brothers, and the final number is the ballad The Late Great Johnny Ace, which is, well, in some senses about Johnny Ace, but also about John Lennon. And it has a wonderful orchestrated string section by Philip Glass, and it was through that track that I first heard Philip Glass music, and also noted, oh, Philip Glass, that's an interesting name. I remember that one. This album, well, was more or less of a commercial failure when it was issued, and it's a pity because I think it's good. I think I like it much better than his first Warner Brothers album, One Trick Pony. This is very varied, maybe a bit too many synthesizers and synclaviers at the time, but it was typical of the 1980s. So, The Late Great Johnny Ace of Paul Simon's Hearts and Bones. Okay, here's another album that I've been talking about and showing so many times, but still. Randy Newman, Sail Away. And the final number of this album is God's Song. God's Song. That's why I love Mankind, because, I mean, first of all, the piano playing is amazing, and the tune is in itself so great, and also the lyrics. Acid, and at the same time a bit, well, loving, but it's a perfect ending of, in my view, perfect album. The only thing I don't like with this album is that it's too short. Too short. Should have been at least some more tracks. So, God's Song from Randy Newman's Sail Away. Okay, now I'm going to show you an album that I think that actually the two last songs on this album are the best songs on it, and even saves the album in some sense. And it's Norah Jones' second album, Feels Like Home. Wonderful cover. And this is the album where we also find guest appearances by Dolly Parton and by Levon Helm, the late Levon Helm, and also Garth Hudson from the band. The last song on this album is a Duke Ellington tune called Melancholia. More or less, yeah, it's Melancholia by Duke Ellington, which is a famous piano ballad. And to take a Duke Ellington piano ballad and write lyrics to it, that's courageous, and it may end incredibly bad, but this is so good. She wrote the lyrics, "Don't miss you at all," and it fits the music perfectly. It's such a good ending. And I can add the song before that is the ballad "The Prettiest Thing," which is also a great ballad. So it's just called "Don't Miss You at All" by Norah Jones from the Feels Like Home album from 2000 and let's see now 4. Okay, time for the last album. Well, not the last album, but the last album of the real band. And I'm talking about Queen. This is their last album, Innuendo, released in 1991, not that long before the great Freddie Mercury passed away. And the last song on this album is "The Show Must Go On." It has never been more true, the final song of an album, than this. The Queen have kept on playing with different musicians and different singers. Well, Paul Rodgers. It's not the same, of course, but still, the show must go on, and Queen's music still lives. So I would pick this. "The Show Must Go On" by Queen from Innuendo from 1991. Okay. An obvious choice would, of course, be "A Day in the Life," Beatles, from Sgt. Pepper. But you showed that already, Bret, so I'm not going to show that. And then I thought about the final numbers on many of the Beatles albums, and I got to the idea that they're not that fantastic. I mean, apart from Sgt. Pepper, the last numbers on the Beatles albums haven't been that amazing, really. I mean, good music, but still not that amazing. But then I thought, well, what about "Twist and Shout" that ends the "Please Please Me" album, which of course we're talking about the original British albums now, not the American Capitol ones that just makes me dizzy trying to remember which songs are on what album. But of course, "Please Please Me" by the Beatles, and the final song "Twist and Shout," which was also, as far as I know, the final song they recorded, and John Lennon had really hoarse voice and used up the last bit of voice he had for that particular number. This is a Dutch issue from the 1970s. It's not a very collectible pressing, but still, it sounds good and it plays well and good music on it. So, that's some great killer album closers, and I hope I hope somebody found this interesting, and bye bye.